In this video, we're going to build upon what we learned in the previous video and use Typer Enrich along with SQLModel to start to build out a data model for the countdown application. So first thing I need to do is install SQLModel, and it's a Python package, so I can install it with pip. Okay. And now I'm going to define the data model class. Now again, this is going to be a countdown application, so I'm going to create a class that represents an event that we want to count down to, and this event will be mapped to a table in the database, which will be a SQLite database for the purposes of this demo. So what I need to do is there's a base class in SQLModel that all model classes must inherit from, or must subclass. So I'll say from SQLModel, import SQLModel. And now I can create a new class, call it event, and subclass SQLModel. And in addition, since this is going to be mapped to a table, set the table keyword argument to true. Now, what you're going to notice is that the SQLModel API in many cases mirrors or very closely follows the SQLAlchemy API, and that's because SQLModel is actually built on top of SQLAlchemy. This is one place in which you might find those similarities. Another one is that the columns of the database table are going to be associated with attributes of the model class. So, for example, every event is going to have a title. And that's just going to be a simple string. Now, unlike SQLAlchemy, we don't have to have like a char field or something. We just instead use the type hints. Again, SQLModel is also maintained by the same person who maintains FastAPI and Typer. So there's another simple attribute is going to be private. So we want to know whether these events are private only to us or publicly viewable. And that's going to be a Boolean. And I can give that a default value of false. So in case it's omitted, it'll automatically be set to false. Now also, we're going to want to have an ID. It's going to be an integer, but this is going to be a primary key. And the problem here is that we can't tell SQLModel if this should be the primary key just using type hints. So we're going to rely upon the field type that we can use to add additional metadata to a column. And here the metadata that I want to add is primary key equal to true and default equal to none. So that way it'll be a required field. And the last one that we'll add is a timestamp. That's going to be the date type in the datetime module. So let's import datetime. And then we'll have datetime.date. And I'm going to use that field type again. And the metadata that I want to add is a factory function for a default value, which in this case would be datetime.date.today. All right, and that's enough for the data model. Let's hook this up to the database. Now, the way that you connect to a database within SQLModel and SQLAlchemy is with an engine. And to create an engine, you have the create engine function. So now I'll go over here and I'll create an engine. And I'll call create engine. And this wants a connection string to a database. And since we're working here with a SQLite database, that'll simply be a file path. Call it events.db. And now I can use this engine to create the database and also the events table inside of the database with SQLModel.metadata.createAll, and then pass it the engine so it knows which connection to leverage when creating the database. And that finishes that part up. So now what we want to do is create a new command. So I'll go down here, app.command, and I'll call that new command, or the function for that new command, I'll call it add event. It's not going to take any parameters or options, but I do need to use this to get input from the user. I could do this using typer, but Rich has a prompt class that I'm going to use instead. So I'm going to say from rich.prompt import prompt, and then I'll use the ask function on that in that prompt class to get input from the user. So first of all, I'll get the title. So prompt.ask title of the event. Now this is always going to be a string, the return type of ask. So for the timestamp, I'll still use prompt.ask, and I'll ask it what is the date of the event, and specify that it needs to be a 4-digit year, 2-digit month, and 2-digit day. But in this case, I need this to be a date time, actually a date time date. But at any rate, I'm going to have to use the stirptime function to parse a date time from a string. So datetime dot stirptime. Here's the string I want to parse, and then a format string. So 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day. No. Oh, need a comma here. And then from this, I'll get the date. And finally, private has to be a Boolean. So I'm going to get input from prompt.ask. Tell the user yes and no are the options. And if they enter a lowercase y, private will be set to true, otherwise private will be set to false. All right, now what I want to do is I need to interact with the database to be able to add a new event to it. And the way that I do that is with a session. So I'll go back up here and I'll import the session. And then down here, I'll use the engine to create a new instance of a session. So with session engine as session. Now the reason I'm doing this within a with block is because sessions need to be explicitly closed, and this will actually close it for me automatically. So now I can just create a new event, and the attributes or columns become keyword arguments. So I'll just fill these in with the timestamp and also with private. Then I need to add this new event to the session. And finally, I can commit the changes. All right, now I need to print a confirmation message to the user. And since this is a good one, this is a good message, something worked, I want to have a success style for that, bold green perhaps. So I'll go up here to my application styles class. I'll say success. It'll be a style again. And this time the color will be equal to green, and it will still be bold. So I can come back down here, console.print event added with title, something oops, it needs to be an F string. And event title, and then the style is going to be equal to app styles dot success. And that's everything. So let's take a look at this and see how it works. So first of all, we'll pull up the help for main.py, and we'll see if the add event command was registered. So say python main.py add event. Okay, we're prompted for a title. We'll just say new event. The date of the event, say 2025-02, February 2nd. And it's not private. And it says that it added it. How can we quickly and easily make sure of this? Well, there's a fantastic extension for Visual Studio Code. I've already got the extensions panel open over here. It's called SQLite Viewer. It's this one right here by Florian Klampfer. This works very well in both Codespaces and Visual Studio Code. So I'll install it, and then I'll go back over to the Explorer. You'll notice that the events database was created. So if I right-click on this and go to Open With, and then select SQLite Viewer, it'll open up the table, because it's the only one. Notice that the columns that we created are there, and here's the row for the event that we just added. So in the next video, we'll continue this and we'll see how to retrieve and display the events.